Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
And in this episode, we're going to be talking about deities and religion in RPGs. Welcome to Wizards of the Tower.
Roleplay.
And in this episode, we're going to be talking about deities and religion in fantasy RPGs.
Yeah.
So, in most RPGs, I know a lot of people hate to play clerics. And that's because clerics are always assumed to be the heal bot?
The heal bot, or they're not much of a warrior. They're always kind of like, have to stand in the back, do the healing. They don't share the glory. They don't get the kills.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've played a lot of clerics, mainly because most people don't want to play them, so I'll play them. I've had fun with clerics. You really have to know how to play them and what you could do with them to, really make them a successful character. Now, one thing, in Delaney's game, and in many of her games, she's created her own panoply of gods. Okay, the whole group. Good, neutral, evil, that sort of thing. And so when I wanted to play a cleric, she said, sure, that's fine, but I want you to come up with a deity for that cleric. And so we did. I came up with a deity. I'm like kind of a minor deity.
Actually, it's a pretty major deity.
Well, at first it seemed like it was a minor deity, but maybe it's gotten more involved over time. So I came up with a backstory for the goddess. It's a goddess. And what it does, how people worship this goddess, all of the characteristics. And we kind of folded it into the storyline, and it worked really good. You can do that. You can create, your own deity system, or you can use a canned deity system.
Right. Yeah, there's tons of canned deities out there. And then if you use the worlds of Faerun, or the Forgotten Realms, or Golarion, which is the Pathfinder world.
You're right.
They have their own deities, and I was looking through them before we started filming, and some of these worlds have more deities than, it's just a huge amount.
Yeah.
Major deities, minor deities, then they get into like the old deities, and then the demons and devils, which they consider a form of deity. And it's just so much. It's too much, really.
Well, it's a lot to swallow. And I think a lot of times people, when they create a world, they err on the side of complexity because they don't want to make something that's simplistic. So think about in our world that we live in right now, this planet Earth. We have, the major religions: Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, Hindu faiths. There's various sorts of other, I'm not, if I miss you, I'm sorry.
Pagan, heathen, Wiccan.
It's because I can't think of them all off the top of my head. But we have various sort of, faiths and beliefs in our world. But we don't have a lot of major faiths. 3, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And please, don't get angry if I get this wrong. They're called people of the book, and essentially it's the same sort of God. The God of the Old Testament, the God of the Torah, the God of the Quran. Outside of that, you've got basically, the Hindu deities, Buddhism, various animistic faiths, and that sort of thing. So we don't live in a world that has. Right now, we don't live in a world that has this extended network of various gods and goddesses. Haven't had that since the fall of the Roman Empire. So, of course, everybody knows before then, within the Celtic belief system, the Roman belief system, the Greek belief system,
the
Norse, they had a very long, extensive.
The Native American.
We're not going to get with Native Americans because that's all.
That's very totally different.
All very different.
Right.
But when you get to those basic, groups of gods and goddesses, they're pretty complex and very interrelated, yet they all have a few things in common. They have basically a father god and a mother god, and then they have various minor gods and goddesses, and then they have, these sort of like good and evil, in the middle, tricksters, whatever. So when you think about how people have created, role-playing games have created these deity systems, a lot of them follow that model of
Right.
good, evil, chaotic, that sort of thing.
But when you really dig deep into the religions, the gods of the old beliefs really didn't fall into a good and evil. I mean, people will try to say Odin is good if you base it upon the old Deities and Demigods book, but Odin in himself wasn't necessarily good, and Thor wasn't necessarily good, and Loki wasn't necessarily evil, and Hell definitely never wasn't really evil.
Yeah, I mean, so if you want to look at it that way, I think that when people construct faiths or when they construct deities, demigods, or whatever for the role-playing game, it makes it a lot easier if they have good and evil and chaos in the middle. Because, okay, good, you're going to want paladins who pray to these so they can become the shining light of goodness. You're going to want evil because you're going to want the thieves and the assassins and the torturers to be following some monsters. You always got to have like a spider person because spider people don't like spiders, and they always got to follow somebody evil. That sort of thing. It makes it easier to just lump things in. In our actual real world that we live in, so many things exist within the gray area. Okay, and you brought up Odin, which, okay, don't jump on me about not being like a Norse scholar here. Okay, it's just basically what I've read. Odin may be the god of war, but Odin is also the god of poetry and knowledge. Okay, and understanding.
He had all these different things that he followed instead of just being God of War, or God of Thunder, or God of Thieving, or God of Trickery, whatever.
Yeah, so there's all these different aspects to something, and so trying to place them into a black and a white, or totally chaotic, arena just doesn't always really kind of work that well. Role-playing games, though, you have to simplify things in order to make the story flow. And so you should have good versus evil, because in a sense, a lot of games are all about good versus evil.
Right.
Good guys want to win, the bad guys want to be defeated. So when you create a whole deity system, it makes it easier, especially if you're going to have paladins and anti-paladins in your game. It makes it easier if you have good gods, bad gods, and in-between gods.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then, you also then, in most games, your clerics or everybody is monotheistic. They worship one god. They follow one god.
Yeah, monotheism, it's basically, you have a cleric who prays to one god. Okay? The exception to that is your game, where people pray, which is like, what would we call your realm?
It's polytheistic.
No, but what would we call your realm? Your realm that you've created?
Well, it's the realm of Edain, that's what I call it.
So in Edain, people pray to all the gods because they don't want to upset one. So they have all the holidays of all the different gods, and they pray to all of them. It isn't that a cleric actually has one simple prayer to a single deity. They have a patron deity, but yet they pray to all of them. And it kind of works out well in that way, because we don't get one that's biased against all the other gods. And that just kind of comes from Delaney's belief that things aren't always black and white, that they're oftentimes are quite gray.
Yep. So definitely a polytheistic world in my view, and you better pay homage to all the deities. Doesn't matter, if you're a cleric or whoever, you have to give homage to all of the deities. Mm-hmm. The god of death in my world is not necessarily an evil god. People look at it as well, death is evil, but death is not necessarily evil. People die of old age, and that's not an evil thing. That's actually pretty neutral.
Well, everything dies.
And in my world, Morte is his name.
Yeah, Morte.
Is the god of death, and he basically owns your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And he carries your soul into the next life as he looks at it.
Yeah.
And until you get... And I kind of played upon a whole kind of Celtic belief that you have to do things perfect in life before you get to move on to Valhalla or heaven or wherever it is. before you get to carry on to the next better life. So basically you get to come back, but you don't know you're coming back.
Right.
And you just relive life until everything is perfect. You've lived everything perfect, and then you get to move on to the next world. Now, if you do something against Morte and try to steal the soul from him, then he will banish you and the soul that you stole from him to preventing to go on. So basically you go into a purgatory type of thing. You don't exist anymore.
Well, that wouldn't be purgatory, not necessarily.
Not really. It's kind of I use purgatory as a generic term.
You kind of get banished to like the nether realms, in other words.
Yeah, and there is no heaven or hell really in my world.
Yeah, in Dane, Morte is pretty powerful. That's the god of death. But typically people, look at the god of death as being evil, yet all things die. Okay, everything dies. So it's a natural process. So in Dane, necromancy is seen as a very, very evil thing, because necromancers essentially steal souls from Morte to reanimate creatures and make them do their bidding, which is basically, stealing souls.
Right.
So that's why a lot of times a plot hook that we have in Dane is about fighting necromancers. And just about everybody wants to fight necromancers. You'll have clerics of the god of Morte, clerics of death, who are probably pretty chaotic, not necessarily evil, but rather chaotic. And it's, a chaotic cleric is really kind of unusual. Who will band together with other good members of a party just so they can defeat necromancers because of that thing.
Well, and a cleric of Morte in my world basically is helping send the body into the next adventure or next life.
Yeah. And well, the body and the soul, because
the body and the soul.
They take care of the funeral rites, but then they also send the spirit. Not I don't want to say soul. We send the spirit on into the
energy or whatever you want to call it.
Now, one thing I know that was really interesting that you created in Dane is that when you die, you're greeted by an old, aged person of your race. Let's say you're a human and you're a man. If you die in battle or something, you'll kind of come to a conscience, and you'll look and you'll see an older man who's withered and old, but yet reaches out for you and gestures and said, "Okay, come on, it's time to go." And so you'll leave your body ascent, and then they'll carry you on to the spirit realm.
Right.
And that happens with dwarves. Like, we had a couple of times when dwarves have died or almost died, and you see like an old aged dwarf, male or female depending, who kind of reaches out and says, come on, it's time to go. Leave that realm and come with me so I can take you to the next realm. So Delaney sort of removed that sense of fear from dying by this sort of caretaker aspect where there's someone there to lead you to the next realm.
Right.
And I thought that was always a really interesting way to do it. And I know that in the time when we've had characters killed, and we've had a few in our games, we've had characters killed, we've always brought that up, that they're met by Morte, who appears, and that's Morte actually, who appears as that person to sort of guide your spirit out of your body into another realm. So I always thought that was a really, really way to address the dying aspects and the death aspect. Not to get too social here, but in the United States, we're obsessed with youth and being young and looking young and health and everything else. And so we approach dying as like the absolute worst thing that could ever possibly happen. And people will try to, they'll try to prolong old age and death, as indefinitely until at the very end they just finally collapse. Other cultures look at it as like, well, I'm getting older. I've had my time.
Yep.
Now it's the younger people's time. Now it's time for me to kind of bow out gracefully. I want to go on my own terms. That sort of thing. That's why I always liked the idea that you had with your character, because it always made it seemed more palatable to all of us when we had someone die.
It's almost like the old cartoon of when you die, here's death waiting for you. It's like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. There's death. Here's this cloaked figure with this sickle. Well, Morte doesn't appear that way. He just appears as a withered person,
Withered.
old and withered, but he seems strong. He doesn't seem, or they don't seem strong. Or weak. They seem strong and energetic. It's just they're just withered.
There's been different belief systems. In the Norse belief system, there's Hel, the goddess of the underworld. There's
Hades.
There's Hades, Neptune. The Grim Reaper comes from the times of the Great Plagues of Europe, where you would have the Grim Reaper used to be called the Great Leveler, meaning that everyone, no matter how rich you were, how poor you were leveled down by death, and that the Reaper, the Harvester, would come for all. And so it was always pictured as a skeleton inside a black cloak with a sickle that could reap and harvest. Everyone, all the souls all at once, and cut everybody down. And that comes from the plagues. So you have that symbol. Most clerics, especially in a Dane, even clerics have their holy symbol. And, it's always typically something
of their main deity.
That they have.
So Mortes is usually a skull.
A skull, yeah. And see, that's kind of what I'm getting to when I start out with talking about the Grim Reaper and the skull. Is I know that Morte is a skull.
And it's any kind of a skull, whether it's an animal skull or a person skull, which people would probably frown upon if you're carrying around a person skull. But if you had this, a skull of a fox or a rabbit or whatever, a small skull, or you carved one.
I always thought that it was like a piece of metal worked into the shape of a skull, or a piece of wood carved into a skull.
And it can be that too. It's whatever you want to use.
That's what I was.
It kind of depends upon what part of the world you're in. So the barbarian worlds, it can be wood carved. It can be metal hammered. It can be an actual bone, physical bone skull.
Okay.
One of our clerics, the cleric we had of Morte, had a, I think it was a fox or an animal. It was an animal skull.
Okay.
That they had as a class.
It was a class. Yeah, I remember that. It was a class.
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked out pretty good too. As a cleric, as someone who's played clerics a lot, I don't really pay that so much attention to deities so much, more so than alignments, because you always have deities assigned to certain alignments. Yeah. Good and evil, and a lot of that comes from playing a paladin too. That you have to have a good deity who can give you your power and your light of righteousness.
Right.
Clerics can have that too. That they can call upon their deity, for various sort of spells or help or information or that sort of thing. Now Delaney does a really interesting thing with spells when it comes to clerics.
Yeah, so this was a rule that we picked up from another group we played in, and it makes clerics a little more powerful, but I don't think it overbalances them. I've never seen a cleric overbalanced.
No.
But it also doesn't make them into just the heal bot or just the buff bot.
Yeah.
They can do so much more, and that rule is I have cleric spells like a sorcerer spell, where they get the spell that they need granted to them by their deity as they need them, because they're basically channeling their deity. Mm-hmm. And instead of having to, pray every night and say, I'm going to pick 3 healing spells, I'm going to take bless, I'm going to take spiritual weapon, I'm going to take shield of the faithful or whatever.
Yeah.
I let the cleric actually pick their spells as they need them, like a sorcerer. They have their whole gambit of what they can use in the book. We only use core rule book for most of my campaigns. It just makes it simple, even though I've got all the other books and there's all these spells. But to me, it makes clerics a lot more defined and a lot more useful. And I know one of the guys that came into our group and wanted to play a battle cleric, and they found that, hey, I didn't have to just focus on battle. I could also heal when I needed to.
Yeah.
And in a Pathfinder, of course, if you've got the feats, you've got channel healing.
Yes.
And then if you got channel alignment healing, that makes it, where you can target to just selective alignment or selective channeling.
Yeah, yeah.
You can do your burst just to your party. Mm-hmm. So now the cleric can be a lot more useful. They can be a battle cleric, or they can be the buff or the debuffer or the healer, whatever they want to be. in as the situation calls for. Now, like I said, some people may consider that it's too powerful to do that. I have found in all my years and the games that we've done, and we've had other DMs go to that rule because they liked it.
Yeah.
They thought it made sense because
Yeah.
we picked it up off another group that we played in.
Yeah.
And it just was a fantastic rule. And it's it's a home rule. The clerics cast their spells as they need them, kind of like a sorcerer.
Yeah.
Whereas the sorcerer is limited in how many spells they have. A cleric's got the whole gambit of what's there.
Yeah. The gamut.
And a gamut.
Yeah.
And you as the DM could say, well, you can't cast these kind of spells because of maybe your alignment.
Well, sure.
If you're a follower of Kelf, you wouldn't be, who's one of my deities
right.
in my world, who's considered good, who's considered a god of arts and craft and poetry and courtship. You wouldn't want to be using Raised Dead or necromantic type clerical spells. That just doesn't fit in. So you as a player kind of have to determine that, would I do that? And if you did it, then I would probably consider you to be a power gamer or a min-maxer because it's outside of who you really are.
Yeah. Having played clerics, I can say that even though you have access to all your basic core rulebook cleric spells, you're barely hanging on by your fingernails in a battle.
Yeah.
Truly. You have to pick certain categories of spells. You can't throw everything at them. But you're very limited as a cleric what you can do. You can spiritual weapon, you can manipulate stone, whatever, stuff like that. You can cast various sorts of spells, but even then you're limited by the action that's happening. A lot of times you're basically healing, detecting evil, creating magic circles against various things. So you're just barely hanging on, really, during a big battle. Yeah. Because essentially, as a spellcaster, you're a target. And everyone's targeting you. They want to get rid of the heal bot. Target the heal bot. Bring them down. Clerics can't move. They can't flit about the battlefield from place to place to place, healing as they go. They're usually heavily armored, so they're kind of like, I got to get over there to him and heal that. And I got to get over here to her and heal her and that kind of stuff. So, if you've gone through your bursts already, then you definitely have some problems. And I found it to be very challenging sometimes to play clerics, especially in a high combat game.
Yeah. And another rule that I do in my worlds is clerics aren't limited to certain specific weapons. Because I look at it as, let's say, the Knights Hospitaller of modern Earth, who were healers, they carried swords.
Sure.
And the whole rule of, in first edition, that clerics couldn't use swords because they didn't want to draw blood, and they were following kind of Saint Cuthbert, who used this big old mace. But let's be blunt about this. That a blunt weapon will cost just as much blood to be spewed as a sword, and sometimes probably more.
No, I know where that comes from. It's an old idea, that you couldn't slash bodies up and disfigure them, but you could pound them into dust with your big mace.
Yeah, crush their skull in their face so they're not even recognizable.
Yeah, so you can do that, but I understand, a lot of that stuff from first edition, deservedly has gone the way of the dodo bird.
Well, some of it still exists out there, that they don't want, your deity uses this kind of weapon, so this is what you're going to use. And I don't considerably believe that in my world when it comes to clerics. Clerics shouldn't be, if you're from a northern tribe, what's the main weapon that they'd probably use? Spears, swords, axes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is like, okay, you worship this god or goddess. Well, their preferred weapon is a mace or a warhammer or something. So when you cast spiritual weapon, essentially a warhammer appears out of nowhere to pound on people, that kind of thing. That's the whole thing about spiritual weapon. It's your deity's favored weapon. And you get bonuses in that through Pathfinder, that your deity's favorite weapon. You get that if you take a mace or a stick or a spear or something like that. But I've liked how Delaney varies that to where you don't have to be stuck carrying a warhammer or a mace. Yeah. You can carry a sword or a spear or something.
Even a bow.
Or even a bow.
Look at Friar Tuck.
Yeah, exactly.
Friar Tuck used the bow.
Well, Friar Tuck had the stick.
He also could use a bow. but he mainly used the bow staff or the quarterstaff.
Was that Friar Tuck or Little John? Because Little John, I think, had the staff.
Yeah.
So Friar Tuck had the bow.
Well, they both would use bows if they had to, but when it came to close in fighting,
Not up on my Arthurian Robin Hood.
Little John, I believe, did use the.
I thought he had the stick. Yeah.
The quarterstaff. So anyway, when it comes to a realm, deities, shouldn't be based totally upon religion, in my view, and I view it as being more polytheistic instead of monotheistic. And I've got a whole list of deities. The other thing I do about my deities in my world is I don't give them just one thing that they follow. They have multiple influences. And they also have other names depending upon where you're at in the world. People call them other names. But for generic reasons within the game, I typically call them, Morte is Morte. And Finra is Finra, and Kelf is Kelf, and Beliza is Beliza, and so forth and so on. It just makes it easier. But what I might do is throw out a name on an occasion, and the people scratch their head, and I'm like, make a religion check. Oh, that's the name of the deity.
Ah.
So, that's just kind of my belief when it comes to deities. But I think we're going to hit more upon this in a second episode here following this one. So, anyway, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, spread the word, and let us know what you think, what your belief is in your realm with clerics and deities and religion. Also, we want to mention, we want to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed to us. As of right now, we're happy that we've hit 100. It's not much, but 100's a start.
That's good.
We're quite happy with that. So we want to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed and everybody who makes a comment. And please continue on. We love hearing that. We're not in this for all the money. We don't. A lot of these people, get all these followers and make all this money. We're not here for all the money. We're here to talk something that we enjoy and want to spread what we do that might help you as a player.
This is a passion project.
Or as a DM GM. Whether it's a tabletop RPG or a computer RPG or whether it's a fantasy game or a sci-fi game or an Old West game, whatever. We're here to kind of talk about that. So anyway, thanks for watching Wizards of the Tower.
Role play.
May all your adventures be epic.
And keep on rolling. Thank you.